Hi, I'm Alex, Ajax Technical Specialist. Today we're going to be talking about the Fluid Power Trainer, its components, and how to use them. This is our Fluid Power Trainer. It's by LearnLabs. One particular thing that we're going to talk about here is in the back of the unit is a reservoir and the pump, the compressor. Please do not take those units apart. Those are not to be taken apart for instruction. We will have a separate compressor that will be available for a disassembly. This unit is not to be disassembled. Now we're going to talk about our hydraulic power manifolds. We have two manifolds. We have our input line and our return line. Now, this secondary line, the return line, just dumps the hydraulic fluid back into the reservoir. The input line runs from the compressor, and this is where we will plug in. You will notice that we have pressure in the line. If I turn the compressor on, it builds up pressure behind the line. If we are done with the class, please bleed that pressure down. To bleed the pressure in the line, here's how we do it. We take our hose, we plug it in, and then we take the secondary line, the other end, and we plug that into the return line. And you'll notice that'll drain all the pressure in the line. So now, if I'm transporting it, there's no chance of me bumping any of these little toggles and having it spray me with oil. So next component that we're going to talk about is our electric valve. So the electronic valve is this unit here. The way this works is it's got two positions. It's got on and off. So it's either open or it's closed. So much like a manual valve, it allows us to operate different components, only unlike a manual valve, this doesn't have in-between positions. So with this one, we control this valve over here. You have valve A switch on the right. This will control, turn on and off that valve. So if I take this and I flip it, you'll hear a little click. That's the valve being activated. So the switch on the left is our power unit, or our unit power. Sorry, I said that backwards. So when I turn that on, you'll hear it makes a lot of noise. When I operate this unit, I'm going to want to have students around the unit so that I don't have to yell to explain things as I'm explaining them. So keep that in mind. When you do power the unit on, it does make some noise. And on this electrical control valve, we have 4 inputs. We have these 2 horizontal ones. These are going to be our power in and return lines. So this I would connect to here. This one I would connect to return line. And these 2 vertical ones are our component lines. So I would hook these up to whichever piston, motor, whatever I'm using. These would go to those. Here's how we would connect all these different components. I take my return line, plug that into here, take my power line or pressure line, plug it into here. I'll take my components and plug them in here and here, like so. Now when I pressurize, it's going to make some noise. Again, keep that in mind. Extends out. Okay, so once we're done with it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that switch on, because you'll notice the line is still pressurized. So I'm going to flip that switch. So I'm going to turn it on, turn it off to make sure I bleed off all the pressure. Makes disconnecting and reconnecting much easier, because you'll see that when there's pressure in the line, you might struggle a little bit. So once that's done, we just pull all the different components off. Like so. The next component we're going to talk about is a 2-part. There is the pressure valve, right, and the flow control regulator. So these 2 units, we're going to use the pressure valve. So maybe we want to demonstrate pressure in between components, or maybe we want to demonstrate how the pressure builds in an accumulator. We can hook these things up and demonstrate these things as the power is being used. As the pressure is being used, we can demonstrate the drop in pressure with the secondary pressure valve, and obviously the flow control controls the flow of the pressure. So if we want to run things a little slower, or whichever the case, we're able to do that. In this case, it's very simple. Loosen up, tighten up, standard controls. All right, the next component we're going to talk about is the directional control valve. So this guy right here is our directional control valve. It's got 3 positions. It's got right, neutral, left. The way we hook this up is a little bit similar to the electrical unit. And so these 2 are going to be our main supply lines, right? So input output or input output, however you want to set it up. It's not going to hurt nothing if you hook them up backwards. And then obviously these two units right here, these two nozzles would connect to your components. So in this case, I'll take my hoses, plug those in. And we're going to take our component hoses, plug those in. And then these would go to our individual components. These we would plug into our components right here. I'm going to move this over so you guys can see it better. Like so. Now, when we power it up, and again, you'll see there's still pressure in the line. I can bleed that off real quick. Now the line is easy to work with. All right, the next component we're going to talk about is our hydraulic motor. This is actually a very simple design, input, output. It doesn't matter how you hook it up. If you hook it up backwards, it'll just spin backwards, no big deal. It's actually a very nice unit for demonstrating flow rates and such. So like if you have your flow rate set up at full speed, it'll spin pretty noticeably. You can turn that down and all of a sudden they can see the actual motor spin a little slower. Just a simple, very straightforward sample. All right, next component we're going to talk about real quick is the accumulator. Just very useful to help modulate pressure in the line, kind of normalize things. One thing I have to mention, please keep in mind, the accumulator builds up pressure and it holds pressure. So if you're going to use it, make sure you drain that pressure off before you disconnect. Otherwise, you will have a fun little hydraulic shower. All right? So make sure that you drain that pressure in the line before you disconnect the accumulator. All right, our last example of the day is going to be our hydraulic cylinders, also known as pistons. Very simple. You have two inputs. You hook them up. If it doesn't work, you probably hooked it up backwards. If it starts operating, you're good. If for some reason somebody disconnects it mid-operation and you have pressure built up in the back of the piston and it won't retract, you simply hook up this end to the return line and hook up the feed line to one of your valves, and it'll push all that pressure from behind the cylinder back into the reservoir. So this is our fluid power trainer. Again, just to remind you guys, please don't disassemble anything in the back. The components on here are very simple. They're designed to where you can't really break anything. So if you hook something up backwards, it'll just operate backwards or not operate at all. So don't be scared to try different layouts. Also, if you're done with the equipment, please wipe it down after yourself. Make sure that we're not leaving a nasty oily mess everywhere. If you run out of the oil rags, reach out to us, let us know. We have some on hand that we'll provide you with. Again, just common courtesy things. And also, before I forget, please make sure that your pressure is bled off before you're done with the class. We don't want to leave things pressurized in the event something happens, we could have a mess. All right, thank you so much.